YouTube, I'm Elise, this is Squeak Code, and today I am dealing with this slightly controversial title. But hopefully once you've watched the video you'll realise that actually it's not really that controversial. This video is actually a response to an article I was sent from rainbowlaw.com, which made me a little bit sad because I'm quite pro LGBTQ rights and quite pro raising awareness for OCD, and this was one of these cases where they've kind of got the latter a bit wrong, and I think it's spreading a bit of misinformation. I think they've got the terms and the semantics wrong. So this is what I'm going to explain in this video. If you want a bit of a TLDR to this, then basically, no, homophobia is not the same as homosexual OCD, which is what they're trying to imply from this article in a somewhat sarcastic way. And to be honest, that pretty much sums it up. If you want to find out more about it, just watch the video. And if you're not interested, either because you're not interested or you already know this, then I recommend skipping towards the end of the video because I've also got some fun announcements to do with a collaboration that's coming up and a bunch of other stuff. So anyway, let's try and not make this too rambly, but I make no promises. So in short, what this article was saying, they were talking about this psychologist, Dr. Stephen Brodsky, who's on the East Coast, and he specialises in treating OCD. And a lot of his, I guess, marketing campaign, I've come across some of his ads and I have actually found them slightly oddly worded, to say the least. I don't know if it's still the case, I haven't actually checked it out recently, but I saw them about a year ago. And they were essentially trying to target people who have OCD with a theme of homosexuality. This I'm going to explain later on in the video. But basically Rainbow Law picked up on this and was criticising that, is this what we're calling homophobia nowadays? Are we saying that it's an anxiety disorder and giving this as people to have an excuse to behave in a homophobic manner? Anyway, this again is just going to be a big rant about semantics, because as soon as I explain what each of these things mean, you should be able to tell that they just don't really have anything to do with each other. So first of all, what is homophobia? Not that I am necessarily the best YouTuber out there to explain what that is. There are plenty of LGBTQ YouTubers out there. I can think of Ashley Mardell, and I know I definitely follow a few others. So if you have any recommendations, feel free to put them in the comments and I will do my best to remember to link some in the description. Anyway, if you were to look strictly at the etymology, then yeah, I guess homophobia sounds like fear of the same, fear of homosexual people, fear of homosexuality, but actually it's more defined along the lines of dislike or hatred of homosexuality, homosexual people, homosexual behaviour. And how is homophobia represented or manifested? Well, there is quite a spectrum. You can go from the very outright harassing people who display homosexual behaviour or hate crime towards homosexual people, which I guess will be universally accepted as forms of homophobia, but you also get things such as slurs, such as saying, "Ha, that's so gay," kind of suggesting that something is silly, and in a way suggesting that being gay is something that is bad, or for instance, perhaps valuing the love between people of the same gender as being not as much or not as important as the love between people of the opposite gender. An example of this might be, for instance, a woman who is bisexual and has had relationships with both men and women, then it is actually very common for people to value her relationship with a man as being more as her relationship with a woman. So this would be examples of homophobia. Obviously, the plethora of examples is endless, but I don't feel like I'm the most qualified person to, I guess, explain this point of view here. So anyway, brief introduction to homophobia. Now let's move on to the OCD. So what they're talking about here is homosexual OCD, and this is going to require quite a long introduction. First of all, if you come to this channel and you don't know anything whatsoever about OCD, I can recommend the video I made, What's It Like to Have OCD? Or what is OCD like? In short, OCD is an anxiety disorder. It is characterised by lots of repetitive, intrusive thoughts that one has no control over, and can make the person have certain beliefs about themselves or certain beliefs that things are going to happen. And their way of dealing with this anxiety is to perform lots of little compulsions which kind of alleviate the anxiety in the short term, but actually in the long term they reinforce it and they form this positive feedback loop that tells your brain that you should be really scared of X, Y, Z. In the OCD community, there is a tendency to categorise OCD by the types of obsession that you have. I am actually not a big fan of doing this, for reasons I will explain in this video as well. But basically, there is a type known as Pure O OCD, which stands for purely obsessional. Again, this is crap semantics because Pure O suggests that you only have obsessions and is characterised by people who just have lots of thoughts, but they don't have any outward compulsions. But the fact that they don't have outward compulsions doesn't mean that they don't have them. They generally have lots of ruminations, they tend to do lots of things in their head, they're just not as easily perceived. So Pure O is a bit of a misnomer. And within Pure O, people also have a tendency to break it down into categories, which again, I can see why it can be helpful, but to be honest, I think it does more damage than good. Basically, I don't like the idea of breaking OCD down into different categories because it gives the impression that different ones are treated in different ways, when actually the main framework for treating OCD is effective and works across all different types, hoarding perhaps being the only one that's slightly separate. So I think it's not helpful to break them down into different categories because additionally, OCD is incredibly individual, and although there are common themes, each person will have a completely different fear and rituals, and I think breaking them down into categories, if yours doesn't fit nicely into any of them, it can actually make you feel quite alone and perhaps feel like your OCD is harder to treat, when that is absolutely not the case. Anyway, so a small rant about why having these categories is a bad idea. But talking about Pure O, so I think most people will actually be able to understand what it's like. I'm sure any of you may have stood on the side of the road or on the side of a train station, and as the train approaches or the car approaches, you might think, what if I stood out onto the road in front of the train and killed myself? Or what if I pushed someone else out in front? And 99% of people who get this thought will think, well, that's a funny idea. I probably just thought this because, I'm aware of the danger of the train, and they just categorise it as garbage, thought moves on, and they go about their day like nothing happened. But yet, 1% of people who might be slightly more prone to getting OCD, or, well, not might be, they are, and they dwell on this thought, and they might wonder, oh, I got this thought. Does this mean I could be suicidal? Does this mean I could be a serial killer? Does this mean I need to monitor what I'm going to do? Basically, they've interpreted this thought to be a part of their persona, or they've basically taken their thought to mean actions. So then they'll find themselves ruminating and trying to justify to themselves, no, I would never push someone out into a train. Maybe I should avoid train stations, or avoid people to avoid harming them, or to avoid harming myself. And this very quickly kind of spirals out of control. I also made a video which actually is by far the most popular on this channel, called What Do Intrusive Thoughts Feel Like? So that goes into a bit more depth and perhaps explains it a bit better. I can understand if you've never had OCD before, it might be quite hard to imagine, how is it possible for thought to snowball that way? Surely, rationally, that's not the case, but as you will see, OCD kind of doesn't really care about rational arguments at all, and that's perhaps one of the worst bits of it. You're highly aware that your thoughts aren't rational, but you can't really do much about it, can you? Anyway, long ramble about what Pure O is. There are different themes of thoughts: harming others, harming yourself, not knowing who you are. Amongst these, there's one which I think is most inaptly named as Homosexual OCD. And basically, it is the kind of OCD where someone gets recurrent thoughts about being afraid that they're not the sexual orientation that they feel they are. An example of this would be a guy has a girlfriend, is very happy with her, perhaps they're people, and they'll interpret this thought in different ways. But typically it means this thought causes them doubt. They want to have 100% certainty that they know their sexual orientation, and they want to have 100% control over the types of thoughts that you have. So in a sense, I guess you could say it is a fear of being of a different sexual orientation, but I wouldn't necessarily say that this means the person is homophobic. Some people who have this will be homophobic. Other people might be actually very accepting and pro-LGBTQ rights. It is more about their beliefs of their person and wanting to have complete certainty over an area in their life. And to perhaps add further support to this position, and also to why I think homosexual OCD is such a bad name for it, is that gay people and homosexual people, people who identify as 100% attracted to members of the same gender, also get this type of OCD, but in their case they get the thoughts about people of the opposite gender. But it would kind of be brushed into the same category, just intrusive thoughts about possibly being of the opposite sexual orientation. And in neither case, the only two inferences you can make about this is A, they are most certainly 100% of the sexual orientation that they've identified as to that point, and in a way those thoughts typically mean that they are pretty much firmly planted in that belief. And B, the way to overcome it is just to simply accept that you can't have 100% certainty and control over your thoughts. Just accept that you could be homosexual, or you could be heterosexual, you could be bisexual, and you will get those thoughts, and everyone will get them, and it's up to you to give them that level of importance or not. That's all that those thoughts mean. It is not an excuse for homophobic behaviour, and in most cases the behaviour is more worries about themselves. So personally, I think they're completely different, homophobia versus homophobic OCD. I can see why they've kind of made this assumption. I think it's quite a misinformed one. I think if they'd dug a little deeper and bothered to learn a bit more about OCD, they wouldn't have even bothered writing this article. But hopefully this clears things up a bit, and just kind of go a bit further down this line of other kinds of thoughts people have, because it just worries me a bit that some people will read this and misinterpret it in this way. There are people with OCD who have the type that they call as paedophile OCD, and in their case they are bombarded with thoughts each time they see a child. What if I do something to assault or molest the child? Which is an incredibly unpleasant type of thought to have. And in every single case, people who have these thoughts, they are not paedophiles. In fact, they couldn't be more against being a paedophile. But they also feel very ashamed about communicating this to people or reaching out for help, because they're afraid they're going to be put on a sex offender list, or that people are going to think that they are actually paedophiles, which is kind of like a bomb waiting to explode, when it couldn't be further from the case. Or likewise, people who are afraid they're going to harm people when they see knives, or that, oh, it'd be really easy to just stab someone, and if I have this kind of thought, maybe this means that I'm going to do that. It's just thoughts. They don't have bearings on actions. Thoughts and actions are completely different things. I think I'm actually going on a huge ramble here, and not quite as much to the point as I was hoping. Hopefully you have understood where I was going with this. Homophobia and homosexual OCD are completely different things. Homosexual OCD is a really bad name to have for these types of thoughts. I think it just helps to categorise or to quickly communicate the nature of the thoughts that you're having, but to be honest, it's just a bad name. And the same way, Pure O is also quite a bad name. Like I said earlier, these categories I think end up doing more harm than good. People just read them, misunderstand them, and jump to conclusions. I'm still rambling. I think I'm just going to wrap it up there. I'm sure later on I'll remember a point that I really wanted to make and kick myself for not making it. If there's something you didn't understand, then feel free to ask down below, and when I write a comment or a response, I tend to be a bit more, I'll have more of a script or more of a plan, so I'll be able to give a clear answer that's not going to take, 10 minutes to get to. And on to the exciting news. So first of all, I have done a collaboration with ShalomAleichem, or Kat, over on her channel, in, I guess, honour, or it's Tourette's Awareness Month as of the 15th, which is when I'm recording this video, but who knows when I'll upload it. So you should go watch it there. I recorded it a while ago, so I can't actually remember what the video looked like. I also feel it was quite long and rambly. But if you want to see me answer questions about Tourette's, go watch that. I can also really recommend ShalomAleichem's channel for getting lots of information about these Pure O types that I've been talking about in this video. She does have an excellent list of resources and talks a lot about the types of obsessions and compulsions that people get, and kind of breaks down a lot of the stigma and misconceptions that surround them. So whilst again I normally kind of disagree with these types, her videos are very helpful and they are great resources, so I recommend you watch them. And the final thing is big plug for myself. So I think I've kind of hinted at this in previous videos, but now I've finally released it. I have been working very hard on making a science channel, which is something I've always wanted to do. And I've finally released it. It's called Draw Curiosity. I'll link it here. And the first video I've made is all about cephalopods and how they see, because it's actually quite cool. I've got a second one coming up, possibly even out when I upload this video, on randomness. And the plan is to have a semi-regular flow of videos, ideally every other week, covering fun aspects of science, of maths, all of them as accessible as possible. I'm extremely proud of what I made, and I won't lie, the Squeak code videos have kind of tapered off a bit in both quality and quantity because I've been putting so much effort into these other videos. So if you enjoy watching my style of presentation, or you just like science, or you just want to find a new channel, then I would highly recommend that one, not just because I made it. Anyway, I think that is everything that I want to say today. Everything that I say always still maintain. If you ever want to email me, ocdapolitic@gmail.com. I love to see what you guys have to say in the comments. Yeah, basically I'm just open open to hearing from you guys. I love to see what you think. I'd love to know what you make of this video. I admit I'm not really sure what audience this is for. I would expect most people with OCD who watch this probably already know about it. Anyway, time for me to shut up. Time for me to say goodbye and let you go on about your day. Bye.